So the big question is this: how do most agents who struggle to get the information that most successful agents hoard to themselves grow and prosper without this information? That's the big question, and this video cast is the answer. Welcome to Real Estate Rockstars. I'm your host, Pat Hyben. Okay, Rockstar Nation, I got a great guest, and we are going to go over some very specific things that you need to know about buying and selling investment properties, about working with investors, about doing flips, about holding properties, everything you ever wanted to know about today's real estate market from an investment standpoint. I got Mr. Jack Gibson from Indianapolis, Indiana on the line, and we're going to get deep today. Jack, welcome to Real Estate Rockstars.
Thank you, Pat. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my pleasure, Jack. Why don't you give everybody a little rundown on who you are so they get to know you better?
Sure. So, Pat, I actually, I'm 39 years old. I've been doing real estate only for 2.5 years. So prior to that, when I was in college at age 19, I discovered a network marketing nutritional business. I got started in that, part-time, built up $1 million business while I was going to school. And then when I graduated in 2000, I went into that full-time, and that's right when I discovered real estate through the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, from Robert Kiyosaki, of course, right? That kind of opened up my mind about, how to invest. And at that point, I was young, I didn't have any money, but I got the vision and the concept to build, a real estate, portfolio. But at that time, I just said, I just need to focus on what I'm making money at right now. And I just don't have the cash to pursue real estate. So I kind of pushed it down the road. And about 3 years ago, my stock portfolio dropped like a rock. I was in oil, and when the oil prices dropped, of course my stock dropped like a rock right along with it. And I said to myself, I'm not living the rest of my life on this up and down roller coaster anymore. So that was obviously it was a very frustrating moment, very discouraging. But I feel like it was necessary. It kind of pushed me in a new direction, and it gave me that kind of that resolve to say, I'm going to learn real estate. I'm going to learn this game. I knew nothing really about it. So I just started downloading podcasts at the gym every morning, 1 hour workout, 1 hour, worth of podcasting on all kinds of real estate subjects. And one of the ones that really kind of turned me on was the Turnkey concept of turnkey real estate. At that point, I was very involved in my nutrition company still. It's a multi-million dollar business. And I just didn't feel like I had any time to do like all the research of how to buy, how to acquire, how to renovate, how to put tenants in place, all of that. So I started investigating turnkey companies and bought from a couple. I had a couple bad experiences. Finally, the third time's a charm. I found one in Indianapolis that started producing some really, really nice double-digit cap rates, had a great experience. And then I was not looking to do real estate as a business, but because I was so excited about the passive income that I was getting, I was actually felt like, okay, finally I got something investment-wise that's stable, that's a high return. This is awesome. So I just started sending all my friends and family and coworkers and networking and as referrals. And I generated like several $1 million in business just from doing that. So then I talked to, my provider, and I said, look, there's got to be a way for me to make some money with this. At that time, he was just giving me like discounts off rehab, for people that I'd refer. So I said, okay, like, how can I make money? So then we partnered up, and then we started doing deals together. And then since that time, for multiple reasons, I decided to create my own company and do everything myself. And so here we are today. We're doing somewhere around $1 million a month in sales at this point. Sometimes, probably averaging right around there. So it's been phenomenal, and I didn't intend to do this, but it's been great.
So, and so just so everybody understands this clearly, when you say $1 million a month in sales, essentially what Jack is doing is he is buying properties at a severe discount, fixing them up, renting them out, and then selling them to an investor at a turnkey, like with a turnkey operation. So rather than the traditional flip, whereas the traditional flip is selling to, say, the first-time buyer or the second-time buyer. Of course, depending on the price range, could be selling to the dream home buyer, but nonetheless is selling to a buyer that's going to live in it. Jack is selling to another investor. So I want to talk to you about some specifics because I want everybody to learn here. First of all, when you go buy a property, where are you finding these deeply discounted properties?
Great question. So we have a lot of different sources. You never want to have one source, right? I mean, if that source dries up, then your supply is gone, and now you've got all this demand and no supply. It's not a good place to be. So we do, our main source is wholesalers. We have a network. We've really vetted, the wholesalers in the markets so that we've got it down to, 3 that we actually really trust. We recorded a podcast on our show about the wholesalers fluff. They always inflate the rent that you're going to get on the property. And then they say it's only going to take $10K in rehab. Well, then it's 20. So we've got wholesalers that are pretty accurate, when they feed us a property. So then tax sales are a great way. So the surplus sale where...
Wait a minute, let me stop you there.
Okay.
Really, you should be doing that. You should be doing the due diligence on that yourself, right? I don't think you should trust a wholesaler, right?
Trust but verify, Pat.
Trust but verify, yeah. I mean, you should be doing that. Like if a wholesaler says, I'm buying this for 60 and I'll sell it to you for 65 and I'm only making $5,000, you need to figure out, what you can sell it for or what you can rent it for and what you can then sell it for, rather than just trusting them, with all those. I mean, that would be massively dangerous to just trust. But you're saying you've built some relationship where you have to do less legwork in the trust category.
Sure, but we still scope every single property, Pat, before we buy. We will not, too many times I've bought a property and then, sewage, needs a dig, which is several $1,000 repair, right? So we are very, very careful, and we don't just say, okay, we'll just take anything that you throw at us. I mean, it's got to fit our model, and it's a simple numbers game for us. We don't get emotionally attached to a property, even if we think it looks really good. We got the pictures and everything looks good. We'll still send our boots on the ground team. They'll go in, they'll scope it real carefully, and just to make sure we're not going to get into trouble, because we're not marking up our properties by huge amounts to where we can withstand to have a broken sewage line or a roof that needs to be replaced that we missed. So I definitely encourage everybody, if you're buying from wholesalers, chances are very good that the property is going to need quite a bit of rehab, and that's their model. They're not doing the model where they're buying it and then they're renovating it and doing all the repairs. They're just buying it from a distressed seller and then they're flipping it quickly, to make that, like you said, usually a $5,000 spread is pretty accurate.
5,000. I was going to ask you, like, is there an amount that a wholesaler has made in the past with you that irked you?
When they try to make 10 off me, that irks me pretty good, because I feel like we're doing all the hard, heavy lifting. When we're buying the property, we're doing all the renovations to it, and it's our capital that's tied up. I mean, they're usually just doing an assignment. Not always. There's some wholesalers that will actually buy their property and then acquire the rights and then resell it.
What's your average sale price? What's your average purchase price, let's say?
So single families, it really depends on how much rehab it needs, Pat. So, if we're talking about like something at the tax sale, totally distressed, I mean, we can get those for maybe 5, but usually 10,000, and then they need, a good 20K worth of work.
So they're doubling their money. Like if someone sells you something for $5,000 and they're taxing on $5,000 on top, that's 100% profit for them. So you really can't do it from a percentage standpoint, you have to look at it like $5,000 total. It doesn't matter if they're selling you a house for 100 or they're selling you a house for 5. You like to see $5,000 profit for their time. That's it.
Yeah, if they're making 10K off me, but they provide all that value where they just negotiated a seller down to an amazing deal, okay, that's fine. But generally speaking, like, my thought is, okay, you want a volume relationship with me? Like, you don't need to make a 10K hit off me on every property. Like, just take your 3, 4, 5 and, be happy. And we're the ones that are going to have to deal with the end investor. We're the ones that are going to have to answer to them when, a tenant's not like in place quite yet. So we have to do, like I said, we have to do all the heavy lifting. So I feel like as far as the value, we should get a much bigger part of the, the total spread.
Yeah. And on this show, I like meat and potatoes. I like exact numbers and exact advice. And so
sure,
$5,000 is a great number. How about another great number? Like, what percentage of value as is do you want to buy something at?
So we sell a lot of properties for around 40, say on a single family home that's going to make 650 to 700 in rent. So pretty good cap. I mean, they're going to hit our end investor after all expenses should be around a 12, 13 cap rate. So okay. Typically we're going to want to make anywhere minimum of 6 to 10K on that. Just depends on how much renovation and holding costs did we have on that property, how much work did we have to do to it. Is it a volume deal? So like, are they buying one property? We want to make 10, because that's a lot of work for one to, service one investor. But if they're going to buy up a package of, 20 homes, we can definitely drop our margins down and give them a better deal. We're not looking to we don't need to make a big hit on every property. I'm just looking for volume and relationships and building portfolios for our investors.
I want you to think about the word toolbox. What is a toolbox? A toolbox is a box full of tools that you use to build something great. At Real Estate Rockstars, we've created our own free toolbox. So everybody that comes on the show as a guest brings a tool with them, and we plow them all into this toolbox, and we give it away for our viewing audience to basically use as they wish. Everything we put in there is an actionable item that can be downloaded, can be printed, can be used immediately. And we got things like scripts and dialogues, checklists for teams, checklists to keep agents accountable, referral forms that are filled out at settlement to get referrals by your buyers and sellers. Everything you could think of that you could use on a regular basis about real estate is included in this toolbox. And it's helping agents worldwide sell more houses and make their jobs a lot easier and processes much more efficient. And the thing is, it's absolutely free. All you got to do is go to hibandigital.com/toolbox or text the word toolbox to 444-999. That's toolbox 444-999. Do it now. Okay. And I know that a lot of agents out there practice the 1% rule when they're buying empty houses, right? I know it's probably a little bit different than when they're buying houses with tenants in it, or not, maybe not, but 1% being, hey, listen, you buy a house for $100,000, the monthly rent should be $1,000, which yearly would be $12,000.
Sure. Right.
Which could be contrived as a 12 cap, but not really. It needs to be probably like 15 because you're taking out the taxes and everything and the insurance. But what rule do you recommend investors go by, and do you recommend real estate agents request their investors go by?
Well, obviously, I think that's the $1 million question. It's a great question. I think it really depends on the market, Pat. So to give you an idea, in the Midwest, I think you're not going to get a big appreciation in the Midwest. These are Indianapolis, cities like Columbus, Cleveland. These are higher cash flow markets, but they're very stable for the most part, but they're not going to go up in value much. So I think if you're not going to get much appreciation, my personal opinion is that you should be getting a higher cash flow or cap rate on those properties. So the 1% rule, I know that a lot of people go off that. I mean, we don't ever sell anything at 1%. Ours are all 1.5 at the lowest, around 2%. So it depends too. Like a single family is going to be less. It's probably going to be around a 1.5 to 1.7, whereas a duplex, a quad, we can get them to 2%. But then on the duplexes, quads, you also have to adjust for a higher vacancy rate as well. So they usually kind of average out around the same net income. So I think that for me personally, I don't want the 1% rule because that's not enough cushion for me should something go wrong on that property or there's extended vacancy. I'm not comfortable with 1%. Should the market downturn, should the roof, collapse or whatever happens that we know will happen, problems are going to happen on properties.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make. Is they underestimate repairs, and people selling the houses, especially multifamilies, and I don't want to generalize, but some commercial brokerages that specialize in multifamilies, they tend to do these pro formas that leave out expenses that a seller might have done themselves, right? Or paid somebody cash for or whatever, and to make the expenses look less. And like you said, jack up the rent or jack up what the rent could be. And that I know, I own 12 single family rentals that I just rent out to random tenants. And I know the one thing that always screws me is, like you said, it's repairs. It's literally like 5 minutes before we started this, I got an email from my property manager that said, "Hey, Pat, there's a dead tree on Girard Avenue and we need to remove it and grind the stump." And then while he's there, we have all this overgrown crap going on and it's encumbering the neighbor's yard, $5,500. And I'm like,
ouch.
Well, there you go. Right there goes like 6 months of profit.
Right.
So that stuff, I don't think people even anticipate. Right.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. I think people don't factor enough in for vacancy rates. I've seen pro formas, multiple pro formas going across different, providers' websites. It doesn't even have a vacancy allotment. I mean, you really think that the property is going to be rented 100% of the time? I mean, you have to factor that in.
Right.
And it just, that doesn't make sense. I've seen them, like you said, they don't even factor in any maintenance and repairs. Like, have you ever lived in a house or any type of property? I mean, there's always something going to break no matter what level of house. I mean, C class, B class, A class property, they're all going to have repairs and maintenance all the time.
Yeah, that's part of the game. Okay, so I want to talk to you about this because I've had a couple of top agents speak to me recently, kind of miffed, kind of like pissed off that investors like yourself and wholesalers are scooping up listing inventory before the seller even can MLS it. And they're saying, man, that seller left, $30,000 on the table because he sold to a wholesaler, or he sold to an investor that knocked on his door, or he sold to a card he got from, Open Door, Open Ceiling, or whatever the companies are that, basically give you a 70%, 65% offer on a postcard. We'll buy your house now for $250 and it's worth $300. And they take that offer, and agents have been, why didn't the seller listed on MLS? They would have got so much more. And more or less they're pissed because they lost the commission. So I want you to give the listenership here, the viewers, some advice on how to get listings like investors and wholesalers are getting them, because it is a seller's market in a lot of areas and people are desperate for listings, and we need to find out, how to compete. So what advice can you give us?
Well, like a lot of the wholesalers that I work with, they're just very, very aggressive. I mean, they're mailing out 30,000 postcards a month.
Wow.
Like, that's their and that's not all they're doing for marketing. that's that's pretty serious. You know, you're going to just by the numbers, you're going to catch people at the right time. But I just don't think we're actually competing, Pat. Like I feel like we're in a different market because the people that we're scooping up are usually they're distressed properties. I mean, these need a lot of cash put into them before they could even be put on the MLS. I mean, it's very rare where I'm going to like get a great deal on a property that's nothing wrong with it and it's all, looking great. Those are usually going to the MLS. We're getting the ones where, our value add is going in and picking up a property that, needs $10,000, $20,000 worth of cash injection to bring it to a performing standard. So I just don't feel like, with our model, we're not competing with agents. We're taking on properties that no one else really wants to touch.
Well, let's say I'm an agent, and you said something interesting before the show. You had listened to a couple of episodes, and agents were calculating their net profit, as we always have them do. And you were like, hey, when you flip a house, you can make 3-4 times as much as you can to list a house. And I don't know why more agents don't flip houses. Let's talk about that. Can you
Sure.
elaborate on what you were saying earlier?
Well, I think I was listening to an episode. It was like 28 million or maybe more than that. And they ended up making, I don't know, maybe $500,000 or something like that. And it just kind of hit me that I don't have to sell near that amount of product to be able to make the same amount. And I know we're doing a totally different model. Plus
yours is almost all profit.
Yeah.
Like when you make a commission.
Yeah.
Like, see, the difference is, for instance, I think I had a guest earlier today that was making $4 million in commissions. Now, he had 27 agents on the team. And I'm not saying this is good or bad because still $500,000 a year is great.
Sure.
And no matter who you are.
Right.
But, he's got to sell $4 million. His company has to sell $4 million and take on a lot of liability with rent and overhead and his working time, trading time for money to make 12% profit. Whereas with a flip, right, you really don't have, you're pretty much doing all the work yourself, right? So it's like when you get a check from the profit of a flip, it's all yours.
Yes, exactly. So, we're looking for a 20%, minimal, profit margin on when we do a flip. And it's not to say that we don't have any expenses. I've got, a guy that, I pay to go out and scope every single property and, help run and coordinate all the rehab crews on the different projects that we're doing. We got a couple other people on our marketing team that help us, investor liaisons and make sure that we give quality service to all our investors. So we do have expenses, but I mean, ours is pretty minimal. I mean, I'm here in my home office is where I do all my work. I don't have an office where I have to spend a lot of money on that type of thing. There's no brokerage fees going out, agent fees, all of that stuff. I mean, our marketing expenses so far, been actually pretty minimal. I mean, I've done so much of this with my own network and then good trust relationship that I built up with people over the last 20 years. And then, there's different real estate forums that we can get in for, pretty much free, where you can just add value and create, leads that way. So we don't have this huge marketing budget either. So you're right. I mean, a big chunk when we sell a property is pure profit.
I want you to think about the word toolbox. What is a toolbox? A toolbox is a box full of tools that you use to build something great. At Real Estate Rockstars, we've created our own free toolbox. So everybody that comes on the show as a guest brings a tool with them, and we plow them all into this toolbox, and we give it away for our viewing audience to basically use as they wish. Everything we put in there is an actionable item that can be downloaded, can be printed, can be used immediately. And we got things like scripts and dialogues, checklists for teams, checklists to keep agents accountable, referral forms that are filled out at settlement to get referrals by your buyers and sellers. Everything you could think of that you could use on a regular basis about real estate is included in this toolbox, and it's helping agents worldwide sell more houses and make their jobs a lot easier and processes much more efficient. And the thing is, it's absolutely free. All you got to do is go to hibandigital.com/toolbox or text the word toolbox to 444-999. That's toolbox 444-999. Do it now. Yes. And I guess your point was that, you know, you would recommend agents get into flips if they can.
Absolutely. So I'm a big proponent in MSIs, right? Multiple streams of income. So I have 3 MSIs. I have my nutrition company, which still pays me a residual passive check every month. It's an amazing business. And that business is, you know, I still am involved with it, but it doesn't take 40, 50 hours a week anymore. And then I've got my flipping business. So that's our turnkey real estate company. And then I've also got my own package of properties that are my own buy and holds. They're leveraged, and those are getting, you know, really, really amazing cash flow. So I have all 3 of these sources of income so that my family is protected. If something dries up, something goes wrong in the economy, I mean, if all 3 dry up, Pat, I think we're all screwed. So it's really just a good position to be in. So for an agent, why wouldn't you want to have and tap into and utilize your expertise and have multiple streams of income? Have your normal listing income and just the normal MLS sales, and then you got your flips, and then you got rentals that are bringing in income as well. You can enjoy the same thing, all 3 sources of income, and leverage your time so much more effectively and make a bigger margin on what you do. You don't have to take the 3% usually on the agent side.
Yeah. It's whatever, you know, it's a negotiable.
A negotiable, right?
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But never more than 6%, right?
The point is 20% is less than 3% or 2% or 2%.
Right. Yeah.
No matter what, 20 is going to be probably more than you're going to get on a commission.
Right. Even if they take both sides.
Let's wrap this up with some thoughts on like what you personally look for when you're buying a rental property. You know, Robert Kiyosaki was on the show. I believe it was episode 405. And I asked him this question, and he said he goes for blue collar, right? He goes for blue collar, traditional tenants that tend to pay less than a specific tenant, like a specific would be like a Section 8 tenant. It's paying above market because it's government paying you, or
Sure.
college students that you can rent by the bedroom or something like that. He likes that niche. What niche do you like as far as tenants, and what do you look for for your buy and holds personally?
I'm 100% aligned with that, Pat. I mean, that's pretty much my entire portfolio. I have a few Section 8s. Section 8s are a little bit tricky. I mean, they are above market rents, which is nice, and obviously you get a guaranteed government contract. But I mean, if you don't pass one little thing on their inspection, they'll use that as a reason to stop paying you, and they can make it a nightmare to get your rent checks. I mean, I think they owed me like 20 grand from last year.
Wow.
So yeah, so you know that's really hard to swallow. I think that was the property manager messed up and didn't get some forms in or something. So obviously
no, that's happened to me too. I've had it where the tenant's actually been at fault, meaning the tenant called and said there was things wrong with the house. They called Section 8 instead of calling us. And then when Section 8 came out and said, yeah, you're right, the smoke detectors aren't working, or this isn't working, then they stopped paying rent until we could fix it. And whenever the inspector wanted to come back to re-inspect it, the tenant always said, no, that's not a good time. You got to come a different time, or what have you, and, you know, held it up another month or so. So, yeah, there is some control that you lose with Section 8. And they can also change the rules on you. They could, you know, I had another Section 8 tenant that got a raise, you know, and suddenly she didn't qualify for Section 8 because of her raise, but she couldn't afford the house anymore. So she could only pay like a third of the rent, you know?
Right.
So she, you know, so So it's interesting, but
To the point of why blue collar, and here's my thoughts. Those are, very, very stable jobs. I mean, obviously there's any sector of the economy that is, if it goes down, like the auto industry in Detroit, when that happened, obviously the blue collar jobs, a lot of them disappeared. So I like Indianapolis just because in the Midwest cities, because there's so many blue collar jobs that are very hard to export overseas. So I want stability with my rents. I want long-term tenants that, can pay even if the economy suffers. My other thought too is if there is a downturn in the economy, and there's got to be one sooner or later here. I mean, we've had some multiple years of prosperity, 0% interest rates. Like, come on, the music's got to stop at some point. When that happens, I want to be protected. So here's my theory. We'll see how it plays out, right? But the people that are paying, your A-class type stuff, $1,500, $2,000 a month in rent, when they lose their jobs, they got to live somewhere. I don't see Americans living in tents anytime soon. So they're going to have to downgrade their lifestyle, and they're going to be downgraded into my middle class blue collar housing. So I don't want to be on the low end. I don't want to be on the high end. I want to be more on the middle end. Pat, that's my theory. We'll see how it plays out over the next 10 years, but that's what I'm investing in right now.
Yeah, I love that theory. And essentially what you're saying is people are going to sacrifice for space and location. They're going to sacrifice space and location for affordability.
Yes.
Because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And at the end of the day, it could be a good argument that we're overspaced now as Americans, or North Americans in general, are overspaced, meaning the average square footage per person is at an all-time high. And the belief structure of a lot of these, especially the young people coming up, is they don't want space. They like these micro houses, and they like these little
tiny houses,
apartments. So
well, yeah,
more of a collapse in the over square footaged, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've read, just like I have, all the reports about the millennials not being able to afford housing, but just because the price of housing has gone up so drastically. So now we have a huge section of our economy that it's all renters. They've got to rent somewhere, right? So when they, when the market hits a downturn, they're going to have, like I said, they're going to have to live somewhere. And so they're going to have to take on an affordable level of housing. When we're at the $600, $700, $800 range, I mean, most people can afford that, even like on a $15 an hour type, paycheck. So that just, for me, I sleep better at night knowing that I got this solid base of, tenant class for the future.
Yeah. And do you manage everything yourself, Jack?
No way.
No way.
Not one. No way.
And is there any technology that your property management companies are using now that didn't exist before, that people can look into, that's helpful? Like, I know there's a lot of ways to access the properties, and ways to for tenants to apply, things like that. Any neat things you want to share?
I don't know if it's new or how new it would be, but like those Appfolio or Buildium, these accounts where you have your own a portal as an investor. I think those are killer, because I can log in right now and I can see exactly the date that my tenant paid. I know if they're late. I know what repairs are going on the property. I know everything. And also for me too, as servicing other investors, I can see all the properties that my investors have in their accounts in my main login, so I can see what's going on, when are they getting the rent. I want to make sure that they're performing well, and if they're not, I want to try to figure out a game plan to help them to get those properties performing, even though obviously I'm really heavily relying on the property management to do that. But I still feel a sense of obligation to my investor clients to make sure that they are performing and
absolutely
and getting what they promised.
Listen, Jack, this has been awesome. As you know, everybody that comes on the show provides a free gift, and we're going to put this on your show notes. We're going to put it on, let's see, hibandigital.com / what do we say? High return. Hibandigital.com / high, HIGH, return. And Jack, what is it you're going to give to our audience today?
Well, it's a checklist. It's our most popular download by far. It's a checklist that you'd use to vet any type of property that you're purchasing as an investment property. So it just kind of goes through all the different things that you want to consider and look at. It doesn't mean you need to check off everything on the list in order to, there's no perfect property out there. But just so you don't get in trouble when you do a purchase. It's also like if you're selling investment property, for any of the agents that want to, do some flips, they can consider all these factors when they're buying it to then flip it of what a potential investor is going to be looking for. So you can kind of use it both on the seller side or on the buy and hold type strategy side. And I'm very passionate about this checklist, Pat, because one of my very first properties I bought was an 11 unit and I didn't vet it properly. And a couple people told me, I remember Old Man River, he told me, don't do it. Just don't do it. There's a reason why she wants to sell. And sure enough, I went ahead and pulled the trigger anyways. And then I had to put like another $60,000 into CapEx. So, oh gosh.
Live and learn, right?
Yeah, you live and learn.
Best way to learn, right? Best way to learn.
It was painful, but it's really good that I had cash reserves. I wasn't buying it thin, so you want to have cash reserves to kind of make sure that you have a cushion if anything goes wrong. Because I did get it back to performing status, and now it's actually really nice. I mean, it's generating some really nice cash. But if I didn't have that cash backup, Pat, I would have taken a huge loss on that property.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm going to put it in the toolbox as well at hibandigital.com / toolbox, or text the word toolbox to 444-999. Jack, great getting to know you, brother. And listen, if I'm ever in Indianapolis, I will definitely look you up. We'll get together and break some bread.
That sounds great, Pat. And I look forward to having you on our show as well here coming up next month. So it's going to be great.
Have a good one, Jack.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you for watching Real Estate Rockstars. Please give us a review wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening. We eat feedback for breakfast, and I don't care whether you give me a 1-star review or a 5-star review. I just want the review. I want to know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. Would love to improve things. Hey, and listen, please subscribe. The more subscribers we get and the more reviews we get, the better guests we'll get for you in the future. Feel free to reach out to me anywhere on social media. Just type in my name. I'm everywhere, and I look forward to meeting you in the digital world. Have a great day, and thanks again for listening to Real Estate Rockstars.